Protestant Christianity first arrived in Thailand during the Ayutthaya era, around the time of the 17th century, but began to play a more definite and significant role beginning in 1828, when the London Missionary Society sent its first group of missionaries. This beginning caused other mission societies to be interested in traveling to Siam around the same time. 5 mission societies initially entered: the London Missionary Society, the American Board of Commissioners for Foreign Missions, the American Baptist Foreign Mission Society, the American Presbyterian Mission, and the American Missionary Association. Almost all of these societies hailed from America. The evangelism of the early missionaries was through performing medical work and alleviating suffering, while at the same time proclaiming the gospel. The result of the coupling of these two aspects led to the local people calling missionaries doctors. That is, doctors who both healed and also taught religion. Missionaries famous for bringing the knowledge of the Western world to Thailand include Dr. Dan Beach Bradley, known as Dr. Bradley, who arrived in 1835 and was the first to bring printing capability to Siam, as well as developing a vaccine against smallpox, establishing clinics, along with many other endeavors. In that same year, the American Baptists sent William Dean for the purpose of evangelizing among the Chinese people in Siam. This evangelism bore good fruit, with many believing and being baptized. In early January 1837, a Baptist church was established, the first Chaozhou Chinese church in Thailand, and what can be considered the oldest church in Far East Asia. In 1847, the American Presbyterians sent Dr. Samuel House, along with the Stephen and Mary Mattoon family, to Bangkok. This mission society founded the first Presbyterian church, Samray. Its members were the members of the mission themselves. And following this, there were also Thai converts, and thus this could be considered a great success for the mission. In order to expand the work, the mission did ministry in the area of educational development by founding in 1852 a boys' school in the vicinity of the Temple of the Dawn, which later relocated to Samray. At the same time that Reverend John A. Aiken started an independent school at Gudijin, Thonburi. Following that, in 1890, the two schools combined to form what became the foundation of what is today known as Bangkok Christian College. In the area of education for girls, Mrs. Harriet Pettit House began the work called the Harriet House School, or the Wang Lang School, and Miss Edna Cole, or Ma'am Cole, was responsible for expanding the school into what later became known as Watana Witaya Academy. Besides other related work, the mission continued to carry forward its main priority, that of proclaiming the gospel and expanding the ministry of the church, by founding Second Church at the Wang Lang School. The church later moved to the Samyan area. The third church was founded in 1896 at Ratchawong Road, being comprised mostly at that time of Chinese members. Until 1904, when the fourth church, Sub Sampantawong, was founded. This church was built by the faith of Thai believers, with Reverend Bun Tuan Bun It heading the work. Following this, in May 1922, the fifth church, Watana Church, was founded in the district of Watana Witaya Academy. By 10 years later, the third church, which was the Chinese church on Ratchawong Road, had, because of differences in dialect, developed into two churches, Sapan Luang Chinese Church and Saton Church. Ministry efforts in the area of medicine bore prominent fruit with the founding of McCormick Hospital in Chiang Mai in 1889 and Bangkok Christian Hospital in 1949. Expanding the evangelistic work from the center out to the provinces began in 1861, but did not bear much fruit in central or South Thailand. This was because of conditions and environmental factors which proved to be barriers to the work. What did bear fruit was the work among the Chinese people in Siam. Evangelistic work in the north continued to move forward. First Church Chiang Mai was founded April 18, 1868. There were 7 converts, and these were people accepted in society, thus causing most people to grow more interested in Christianity. But this also aroused the displeasure of Jao Gawilorot, at that time the prince of the peoples of the north, because any increase in conversions to Christianity was perceived as a threat to the ruling authority, as well as to established cultural norms. In mid-September 1869, Jao Gawilorot ordered the execution of Noi Sunya and Nan Chai, and also sternly announced that anyone who changed religions would be executed. This marked the first time that mission societies would have to seek assistance from King Rama V. Many other instances of persecution occurred until, at the beginning of October 1878, Northern Christians were made recipients of the royal grace of King Rama V. When the people of Chiang Mai, Lamphun, and Lampang were granted freedom of religion, this proclamation became known among Christians as the Edict of Religious Toleration. Originally, the carrying out of the work of ministry was the responsibility of the missionaries alone. Later, however, there was a growing push for national believers in each locality to take responsibility for themselves. Among the mission societies, some were in agreement and others were not, fearing that Thai Christians still lacked experience in managing the churches. The idea of an indigenous Thai church began to grow. One important reason for this was that Christianity might be freed from its image as a foreign religion and instead be considered part of Thai society. Various movements culminated in April 1934's conference to found the Church of Christ in Siam, which, when under Field Marshal Paul Pibun Songkram, Siam became Thailand, later became known as the Church of Christ in Thailand. From that time forth, Thai Christians became more responsible for the work of the church. During the governance of Field Marshal Paul Pibun Songkram, nationalistic policies had a very negative impact upon Christians, with threats and harassment, as well as societal restrictions. Many Christians could not withstand the societal pressure, and so abandoned the faith. World War II burst into Thailand on the morning of December 8, 1941, when the Japanese army under Emperor Hirohito brought military forces onto Thai soil in the south of the country. Thailand, under the leadership of Field Marshal Paul Pibun Songkram, positioned itself with the Axis powers and later declared war on the Allied forces. This resulted in American missionaries being forced to flee the country, but some were arrested and held until June 29, 1942, when they were all sent back to America under a prisoner exchange agreement. During World War II, the churches were cut off from all mission societies. Being considered enemy property, Christian schools and hospitals were seized by the government. Under martial law, all churches were closed and prohibited from holding worship services. Christian leaders found themselves able only to visit members and urge them to remain firm in their faith. Christians were fearful, yet still managed to worship secretively in homes of church leaders and members. On August 14, 1945, the Japanese army declared unconditional surrender, ending the war and beginning a new chapter in the history of the Thai Church. After the war, American Presbyterian missionaries returned, along with other mission societies from throughout the world, to conduct their ministries and activities. Some of these societies joined with the Church of Christ in Thailand, but many remained independent. And some of these later formed the Evangelical Fellowship of Thailand. The war years of being cut off from the rest of the world taught Thai Christian leaders how to conduct the work on their own and gave them full confidence in ministering. Therefore, some Christian groups requested that the missionaries transfer all of the work to Thai oversight. At the same time, certain groups, such as the Thailand Baptist Churches Association and the Evangelical Fellowship of Thailand, continue to work in partnership with missionaries. Later, the number and variety of organizations in Thailand grew, but there are only 4 formally recognized groupings: the Church of Christ in Thailand, the Evangelical Fellowship of Thailand, Thailand Baptist Churches Association, and the Seventh-day Adventists. During the Third Thailand Congress on Evangelism, usually referred to as Congress 3, held in 1988, the first 3 of these groups together formed the Thailand Protestant Church Coordinating Committee, in order to coordinate and support joint ministry done in the name of Thai Christians. This was a major change and also demonstrated the unity among Thai Christians. In the present day, the carrying out of ministry has seen changes in strategies to fit the changing times, but with the gospel message unchanged. Various media, including radio, television, print, and the internet, are being employed in order that the quality of Thai lives might be improved upon the basis of Christian ethics and in order to strengthen the Thai Christian community. For over 175 years, Thai Christians have laid up a valuable store of experiences through periods of joy and sorrow. Various memorable persons and events have come and gone, Passing into the pages of history, one thing remains unchanged: the abiding, steadfast faith of the Thai Christian community.